That foolish American girl will lose everything once she signs.
Be careful. I understand every word you're saying.
The moment my daughter's future mother-in-law raised her glass and called her a temporary American mistake, everyone at the table laughed. Everyone except me. They thought I did not understand their language. They had no idea I understood every cruel word. And before that dinner ended, I would learn that insulting my daughter was only the smallest part of their plan. Hello, my name is Claire Bennett. I am 56 years old, and I live outside Seattle, Washington. For most of my life, people have mistaken my silence for ignorance. I learned a long time ago that when people believe you cannot understand them, they tell you exactly who they are. My daughter, Emily, was 28 when she became engaged to Adrian Petrov. She was smart, kind, and more patient than I had ever been. She worked as a pediatric physical therapist and had a gift for making frightened children feel brave. Adrian was 31, polished, handsome, and ambitious. He worked for his family's luxury import business. When Emily first introduced him to me, I liked him. He listened when she spoke. He remembered small details. He brought flowers, helped with the dishes, and never checked his phone at dinner. But there was one thing I noticed. Whenever his parents called, Adrian changed. His shoulders stiffened. His voice became quieter. Afterward, he would smile as if nothing had happened. His parents, Victor and Larissa, had immigrated to the United States from a small Eastern European country nearly 30 years earlier. They spoke perfect English. But at home they preferred their native language, Valerian. It was uncommon enough that most Americans had never heard it. What they did not know was that I had heard it almost every day of my childhood. My late father worked for the State Department. When I was 7, our family moved to Valeria, where we lived for 8 years. I attended a local school and became fluent. After we returned to America, I rarely spoke the language. Even Emily knew only that I had lived overseas. She did not know where, because my father's work had made our family cautious about details. When Adrian invited us to an engagement dinner at his parents' waterfront home, Emily was thrilled. She spent a week choosing a dress. She baked Larissa a lemon cake and carried it into the house like a peace offering. Larissa greeted her with a tight smile. "Homemade," Emily said. "Adrian told me lemon is your favorite." Larissa looked at the cake, then said something to her sister in Valerian. "She is already practicing to be useful." Her sister laughed. I felt the first cold warning in my stomach, but I said nothing. At dinner, 12 people sat around a table beneath a crystal chandelier. The food was beautiful, the wine expensive, and every smile felt carefully rehearsed. Emily tried to join each conversation, but Larissa repeatedly interrupted her. Then Victor asked Emily about her job. "I help children recover from injuries and developmental challenges," she explained. "Noble work," he said in English. Then he turned to Adrian and spoke in Valerian. "At least she will have something to do until you give her children." Adrian looked down at his plate. He understood. Of course he did. He did not defend her. Minutes later, Larissa asked Emily whether she planned to keep her maiden name professionally. Emily smiled. "I haven't decided yet." Larissa lifted her wine glass and said in Valerian, "Let her keep it. It will make the divorce paperwork easier." More laughter. Emily glanced around, confused. She gave a nervous little laugh because everyone else was laughing. That hurt me more than the insult itself. Then Larissa added, "She is sweet, but ordinary. Adrian will become bored. This is a temporary American mistake." My fingers tightened around my glass. I was ready to expose them. But Victor's next words stopped me. "It does not matter," he said. "Once she signs the agreement and transfers the lake property, Adrian can end it whenever he wants." The lake property. My father had left Emily 30 acres near Lake Shellen. It was worth more than $2 million, but Emily almost never spoke about it. Adrian knew because they had discussed building a small rehabilitation retreat there someday. Larissa leaned closer to her husband. "And the Bennett woman suspects nothing." Victor looked directly at me. "Her mother smiles like furniture. She understands nothing." I smiled back. At that moment I decided not to confront them. Not yet. An insult could be denied. A financial scheme required proof. After dinner, Larissa announced that their attorney had prepared a simple family agreement for Emily to review. Adrian quickly said it was only a formality related to wedding expenses. Emily looked surprised. "You never mentioned an agreement." "I only heard about it today," he said. That was a lie. I knew because before dinner I had heard him tell his father in Valerian, "I will get her signature, but I need more time." On the drive home, Emily stared through the windshield. "They don't like me," she said. "What makes you think that?" I asked carefully. I could feel it. And Adrian acted strange. I wanted to tell her everything. But I knew my daughter. If I accused the man she loved without evidence, she might believe I had misunderstood. Worse, Adrian's family might destroy documents and change their story. So I told her one thing. Do not sign anything until an attorney of your own reads it. She agreed. The next morning, I called an old friend named Rebecca Sloan. She was a forensic accountant who had once helped uncover fraud at a nonprofit where I served on the board. I explained what I had heard. Do you believe Adrian is involved? She asked. I don't know, I said. That is what frightens me. Rebecca told me to obtain the agreement legally, keep every message, and say nothing about understanding Valerian. 3 days later, Emily received the document by email and forwarded it to me. It was 42 pages long. The first sections looked like an ordinary prenuptial agreement. But buried near the end was a clause creating a jointly controlled development company. Emily's lake property would become collateral for that company's debts. If the business failed, she could lose the land. Another clause gave Adrian temporary voting authority if Emily became unavailable. For more than 30 days. The word unavailable was never clearly defined. Rebecca called it a trap dressed in legal language. Then she found something worse. The name of the proposed development company, Northcrest Wellness Holdings, already existed. It had been registered 6 months earlier by Victor, Larissa, and Adrian. 6 months earlier, Emily and Adrian had been engaged for only 8 weeks. I sat alone in my kitchen staring at those records. I remembered Adrian helping me carry groceries, asking about my garden, and calling me Mom. For the first time, had every kind gesture been part of a performance, I needed to know whether he was a willing participant or a frightened son trapped by his parents. The opportunity came at a wedding planning lunch the following Sunday. Larissa brought fabric samples, guest lists, and a detailed schedule no one had requested. Emily stepped outside to take a work call. Adrian went with her. Larissa and Victor remained at the table with me. They switched to Valerian immediately. The girl is delaying, Larissa said. Victor answered. Adrian says she trusts her mother. We may need to separate them. How? Offer Claire a long trip after the wedding. If she refuses, make Emily believe her mother is jealous. Larissa smiled. Adrian already planted that idea. My heart sank. That night, I asked Emily whether Adrian had said anything about me. She hesitated. He thinks you may be struggling with the wedding because Dad isn't here. My husband, Daniel, had died 4 years earlier. Using my grief against my daughter was a cruelty I had not expected. Do you believe that? I asked. I don't know. You've seemed suspicious of everything. Her answer hurt, but anger would only push her closer to them. I miss your father every day, I said. But I would never confuse missing him with wanting you to be unhappy. She hugged me, yet I felt a new distance between us. 2 days later, Rebecca discovered that Northcrest had borrowed $800,000 from a private lender. The loan was due in 90 days. The company had almost no assets. Emily's property was not part of a future plan. It was intended to rescue a failing business. Then Emily called me in tears. Mom, someone filed a claim against the lake property. I drove to her apartment. A notice from the county claimed that Northcrest had performed surveying and development work on the land, but had not been paid. The company was demanding $186,000. Emily had never hired them. Someone had forged her electronic signature. Adrian arrived 20 minutes later. When he saw the notice, all the color left his face. Did you know about this? Emily asked him. Numbo. He answered too quickly. Look at me, she said. Did you know? He stared at the floor. That silence told us everything. I finally spoke to him in Valerian. How long did you think you could hide this? Adrian's head snapped up. His face showed pure shock. You speak Valerian? Fluently. Emily looked from him to me. What is happening? I told her about the engagement dinner. Every insult, every laugh, every word about her property. I watched disbelief turn into humiliation, then anger. Adrian began to cry. He admitted that his father's import business was collapsing. Victor had made reckless investments and owed money to dangerous private lenders. Months before the engagement, his parents learned about Emily's land. They created Northcrest and pressured Adrian to persuade her to use the property as collateral. I never wanted to hurt you, he said. Emily's voice became very quiet. But you did. Adrian insisted he had delayed the agreement because he hoped to find another solution. He claimed his father forged Emily's signature without telling him. You sat there while they mocked me, Emily said. You let me laugh with them because I didn't know they were laughing at me. I was afraid. So was I, she said. The difference is that I trusted you. She removed her engagement ring and placed it on the table. Adrian did not touch it. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. The next morning, Victor called Emily and calmly told her that ending the engagement would not remove the claim on her property. If she fought it publicly, he said, her professional reputation would suffer. He claimed to have emails proving she had approved the project. Emily recorded the call. That was his first mistake. His second was assuming we would be intimidated. Rebecca connected us with attorney Marcus Lee, who specialized in financial fraud. He asked Emily to preserve her phone emails and cloud records. A digital examiner found that the approval messages had been sent from Emily's account while she was working at the hospital. The login came from an internet address registered to Adrian's parents' home. Then we found the device used to log in. It was Adrian's old laptop, the same one he had lent his father months earlier. Marcus contacted the county and filed an emergency action to freeze the false claim. He also notified the state attorney general and the private lender. Once the lender learned that the promised collateral might be based on forged documents, its attorneys moved quickly. Still, Victor refused to surrender. He invited us to a family reconciliation dinner. Marcus advised us not to go. But Emily surprised everyone. "I want them to see me," she said. "I want them to know I am not ashamed." We agreed, but this time we prepared. Emily wore a small recording device, legal under Washington law with the written consent of everyone present, or so Victor believed. Marcus sent a formal notice stating that the meeting would be recorded. Victor's attorney acknowledged it. When we entered the waterfront house, Larissa looked at Emily as if she were an uninvited employee. "You have caused great embarrassment," she said. Emily sat down. "No, I discovered it." Victor placed a folder on the table. He offered to release the property claim if Emily signed a confidentiality agreement and paid Northcrest $50,000 for expenses. It was extortion wrapped in stationery. I asked, in English, why would an innocent company accept $50,000 instead of the $186,000 it claims to be owed? Victor smiled, to avoid pain for everyone. Then he turned to Larissa and spoke in Valerian. "The old woman is trying to sound clever." Larissa replied, "Let her. Once the girl signs, neither of them matters." I waited until they finished. Then I answered in perfect Valerian. "That is what you said at the engagement dinner too." The room became silent. Larissa's mouth fell open. Victor's smile disappeared. I continued in their language. "You called my daughter ordinary. You called her a temporary mistake. You planned to take her land, isolate her from me, and throw her away when you were finished." Victor stood. "This meeting is over." "No," Emily said. "Your control over me is over." At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Marcus entered with an investigator from the Attorney General's office. They were not there to arrest anyone that evening. They were there to serve preservation orders and legal notices. Every company computer, financial record, and relevant account had to be protected from deletion. Victor looked at Adrian, who had been standing silently near the window. "You did this," he demanded in Valerian. Adrian swallowed. "I gave them the records." That was the final twist. For the first time in his life, Adrian had chosen the truth over his father. It did not save his engagement, but it helped save Emily's property. Adrian provided emails showing that Victor had ordered the forged claim and instructed an employee to create fake invoices. He also revealed hidden accounts used to move loan money into Victor's personal investments. The legal process lasted 11 months. Northcrest's claim was dismissed. Victor was charged with fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. He eventually accepted a plea agreement that included prison time and restitution. Larissa avoided prison because the evidence showed she knew about the plan but had not signed the false documents. However, she lost the waterfront house when the family business entered bankruptcy. The private lender seized several company assets. Victor's name appeared in local business news, not as the respected entrepreneur he pretended to be, but as a man who tried to steal from his future daughter-in-law. Emily kept every acre of her land. Adrian cooperated fully and was not charged. He wrote Emily a long letter apologizing, not asking her to take him back, only admitting that his silence had made him part of the harm. She never answered. For months, Emily blamed herself. She wondered how she had missed the warning signs. I reminded her that trusting someone is not a moral failure. Betraying that trust is. 1 year later, we stood together beside Lake Chelan, watching construction begin on a small retreat center for children recovering from serious injuries. Emily used part of the land exactly as she had once dreamed. She named the center Daniel House, after her father. On opening day, she gave me a framed photograph of the two of us standing in front of the unfinished building. On the back she had written, "Thank you for hearing what I could not." I cried when I read it. People often imagine revenge as shouting, humiliation, or destruction. But the best revenge we found was quieter. Emily did not become cruel because they were cruel. She did not let their lies define her. She protected what belonged to her, built something good from the wreckage, and walked into her future without asking anyone's permission. As for me, I still remember Victor looking across that dinner table and calling me furniture. He was right about one thing: I was quiet, but quiet people are not empty, and silence is not ignorance. Sometimes the person saying nothing is the only person in the room who understands every word.